episode of Talk and Go, and today I'm with Ana Karima,
Hello.
one European voluntary here, like in Universo. Okay, the main objective of this interview is like to talk, to discuss about some ideas about differences between Germany and Italy, the South Europe, the way you feel these cultural differences or similitudes sometimes. Yes, and for me it will be really interesting to discuss about it. So, I don't know, let's start. You're from Munich, right?
Exactly, I'm from Munich, which is the capital of the federal state Bavaria, which is next to Austria.
Okay. It's interesting for me, like, discuss about even inside Germany and, I don't know, the differences or how do you feel about Germany as a country? It's a federal state, but do you feel like in every federal state is like a very peculiar administrative place or?
So for sure, I don't know if you know about this, but after the Second World War, with the Allies, it was discussed that Germany has to be a federalistic state. So that something like the Nazis couldn't happen again, that they that people could gain power so easily. So the federal states in Germany have a lot of power, and Bavaria is the biggest federal state in Germany, and let's say yes, one of the most peculiar federal states. Let's say the rest of Germany always makes fun of Bavaria because. We have many regions in Bavaria have a very strong accent, and it's like the typical German culture, which the rest of the world knows, basically comes from Bavaria, like the beer culture, the traditional clothes, the dirndl and the lederhosen, they come from Bavaria. Also the Oktoberfest is in Munich, so let's say we're very stereotypical Germans, and yes, I think Bavaria is also one of the most conservative federal states. It's not necessarily right-wing, but very Christian and conservative. So I think, yeah, there's also, like in Catalonia, for example, this movement that Bavaria should be under a king again.
Oh, okay.
Even though Germany doesn't have royalty, but that we are getting our own country. So it's a very interesting situation.
Okay, so let's say that part of the identity or culture in Germany has been represented by the people or the state of Bavaria.
Yes, definitely. So if you go back in time, it was only Bavarians really who wore, for example, the traditional clothes, but now they're popular all over Germany. But originally, those traditions are coming from Bavaria.
Okay, interesting. And what do you think about the relations between Germany and other countries? Because Germany, I think, is one of the most powerful countries in the European Union, and the economy was very managed during the last years, especially after 2008. With Merkel, yes.
Yes, for sure. I think oftentimes, let's say Germany presents itself as something better in comparison to the other countries because our economy is so stable, we're very good education-wise, we have free education, we're one of the most central countries in Europe, which has the most power. So I think, it's basically but a lot of Germans, and especially German economists and politicians, they like to spread and represent their power to the outside a lot.
I don't know, how do you feel about it? Like, you come from Germany, a very powerful country, more or less stable during the economic crisis.
I mean, I'm very lucky to be born in Germany. Not like it's a privilege that I was born in this country because we have I don't have to worry about where I can sleep tomorrow, where if I have enough food, because the German government provides a lot about that, and we have free education, and so of course I'm very lucky in that kind of sense. Of course there is a lot of like space which can be filled with better things in Germany, because we also, for example, have a right-wing movement, and yeah, of course there are a lot of problems in Germany as well, but I think of course in general I can say that I'm very lucky to be born in Germany.
I was saying that yes, I feel like maybe because I'm from Spain, like for me, especially during the first economic crisis in 2008, I don't know, the feeling it was like yes, everything it was so complicated about to find a job, like even the fact that you could study degree or master, but it's never enough. Not like I don't know how to say the laboral market.
Of course, yeah.
It's too complicated sometimes. And yes, I don't know, I have the feeling like in other countries in Europe, not especially in the south, but it's always more easy. But I mean, it's my point of view. But
No, I totally agree with you. I think it's much easier to find a job in Germany, or I don't know, in Scandinavian countries
yes.
than in the south, especially like you said after the economic crisis. I think a lot of people like stay at home for a long time, like young people, because it's like hard to find a job and then to move out. But for example, like in Germany, it's very common that most people move out by the age of 18, and then by the age of 25 they find a job. And yeah, I think that we also, I don't know, for example, every time I had like Spanish class or something, it was always a big topic that in Spain it's much harder for young people to find a job than in Germany, also statistics-wise, because yes, there just isn't as much money, let's say, in the country to give a job. Like if you study certain things in Germany, you will for sure find a job. Of course, if you study something, for example, I don't know, like music or in the humanities field, it's going to be hard to find a job as well. But if you, for example, do a formation, you will always find a job. And so.
Yes, lucky you. And then talking about the topics, what do you think about these ideas about in the south, in Spain or Italy, like the people is like very lazy, let's say, and
I think it's stupid that we still have those stereotypes. I think you can also really apply that on Germany. Like, of course, we might think like, yes, we're so disciplinary and we're so strict with our work, but actually you can also see it as we're so close-minded, we're just focused on work, we don't have any fun except that for our life. So I think a lot of people also in Germany admire the South, because you're much more open-minded, you're just more fun people to be around than Germans. You always have to be punctual. Like, those stereotypes are actually true, I think, in Germany. Like, if you're not punctual to an appointment and then you miss it, then you have to do another appointment for it. If, I don't know, yeah, so it's like very strict everything in Germany. So I think, yes, maybe that's why our economy is so good, because it's like all about being punctual, finding work, etc., like very linear life. But I think that's why a lot of people are still unhappy in Germany.
Oh, okay. Yes, even for example, when I interviewed one of my friends, she's living in Sweden, she told me like, no, but even in Sweden, the vision about the south of Spain is like quite good. Like,
Yeah, for
people
sure.
like Spain or the south, but sometimes I have this idea like most of the people see us like in a bad way, like. Yes,
I don't think at all. I think a lot of, like, especially Germans really want to move to Spain more even than Italy. I think like a lot of Germans move to Gran Canaria, Mallorca, of course, Andalusia. So just because like Nordic countries like Sweden, Germany, etc., they just don't have that much sun. So I think a lot of people like admire the way of living of the southern countries.
Yes. No, of course, Mediterranean,
Yes.
Mallorca, yes. Okay. I think in Germany, at the end of this year or the next year, we're going to have new elections.
Yes, that's
Okay.
right. In October we're going to have new elections.
This October.
This October.
Okay.
And it's very exciting because it's the first elections which Angela Merkel won't be our chancellor anymore. So it's still quite unsure who's going to be chancellor because it probably will be one of the members of the Conservative Party. But the thing is, so my federal state, Bavaria, has a different Conservative Party than the rest of Germany has. But they're in one union as, the union is called Die Union, so the union. And they're with the Conservative Party of Angela Merkel, which is called Christian Democratic Union. And the party in my federal state is called Christian Social Union. And there are some candidates from the Christian Democratic Union of the rest of Germany. And there recently has been like a boss of the party been elected. But it is rumored that he is not going to be chancellor because he's not very well liked, let's say, by the public.
Okay.
But that the boss of the Christian Social Union will become chancellor, which like rarely happens that someone from Bavaria, from this federal state, becomes chancellor from the other party. So it's quite interesting, also because this maybe chancellor, which is called Markus Söder, is very strategic. He in the Corona crisis, he was very in the front line. He was like, we need to do that, like playing like a strong man. And in the climate crisis, he's trying to get nearer and nearer to the Greens because he knows that they're his biggest opponent right now, who will get probably the most votes after the Conservative Party in Germany. So he's like saying always, oh yeah, we should go into a coalition with the Greens and like trying to get more votes because of that. So it's rumored that he will be our next chancellor, but actually no one knows who will be next chancellor.
Okay, so I think Germany right now, it has a really big challenge after these years with Angela Merkel, like strongest person in the European Union. And what do you feel about the right fast parties? Because I think now it's a very common situation that even in Spain or in Italy.
For sure. But yeah, like before the COVID crisis, we all thought, okay, it could be that the right-wing party is going to be the biggest party after the Conservative Party. But actually, in the COVID crisis, the right-wing party fucked up a lot. So right now, there are not very high expectations for the right-wing party. Also, the German Secret Service is like watching the right-wing party now and looking if they are going against the constitution, so if they will be banned maybe. Because, yes, for example, there are some people who deny the Holocaust or something like that in the right-wing party. So it's for sure going to be an interesting year. There's not only like the nationwide election, there are also smaller elections like federal state elections this year, like 6, I think. So it's an interesting year in Germany for sure because a lot of things will change. And I mean, we had Angela Merkel, I think, for 16 years. So like my generation grew up with her. I don't know any other chancellor, so it's going to be an interesting year for everyone, yeah.
Okay, let's see what happens in the next elections.
Yes, I'm crossing my fingers that everything will go well and it won't be as bad as many of us think it will be.
Okay, so that's all. Thank you, Ana Karima, for participating. And see you in the next Talk and Love.